Yo, I'm gonna do a little bit of a lightning round producing here. Just gonna make a quick beat and mess around with some of these new sample sources I've got. So lately I've been digitizing a lot of my records that I have simply for sampling. I do have a lot where I want to hold on to them because I like the album, but aside from those, I do have a lot that I bought simply because I wanted to see if there was anything sampleable on them. And spoiler alert, pretty much everything is sampleable somehow. So I like to think of sampling in a couple different, we have a couple different options for how we actually want to execute this. So the first one is, I guess I'll call it cargo culting, which is basically, say that I take any one of these, and I drop it in, and we just assume that everything in here would sound good with the drum loop on top. So let's just head to my drum loops here, and let's figure out why I can't hear it. Okay. So cargo culting essentially is not usually a term used in music production. Typically it's a software development thing where you just assume that the entirety of someone else's code is going to work as soon as you put it in your own project, which obviously is not true all the time. But in the case of sampling here, this is the way that I kind of think about it. So let's bring this down a little bit. Let's bring this up a little bit. Bring this up here. And just so I don't get hit with a copyright strike, I'm going to go ahead and all of these I'm going to transpose. So they're still a little recognizable, but not by the automated copyright police. So yeah, doesn't sound awful, but that's not the track that I want to make today. So we call that one cargo culting, and that's basically just drop absolutely everything in. Okay. Next one, I like to call it, or I'm actually just making these names up on the spot, but we're going to call it even length piecemeal. And basically what this would be, I'm not going to bother time stretching anything. I don't think I'm going to be that careful about anything I do today. So basically it would be an even length. So no idea what this is going to sound like, but I'm going to take that, I'm going to put that there, and let's do, okay, who knows? Right, so that's an idea. You would probably want to choose different samples. So let's try something like this. Okay, pretty boring, but sounds better. I'm going to drop this to like a boom bap tempo, so 92. perhaps even slower than that. Let's do 86. Cool. I like that. So we'll just leave that there for a second. So this second one, even length piecemeal, means that we are actually separating our sample up into bytes, but we're not being too careful to time stretch anything. We're just going to assume this guy right here, this chunk, that's one sample. This chunk is another sample. And we're not going to be very careful about chopping things up. And I like that method because it's really easy to get lost in the weeds, and we really want to keep moving. So even length piecemeal. The second one I guess we could add is a variable length piecemeal. So basically what that would mean is at each one of these transients, each one of these really noticeable transients, that is, I would cut it. Okay, so like this section here is one sample, this section here is one sample, this section here might be a sample, maybe we would cut it right here, I don't know. This is where it starts to get a lot more granular, a lot more decisions need to be made. And if we're not careful, we can get stuck here within the first, you'll notice, you know, we've only listened to like the first, whatever, 20 seconds of this entire album. And this entire album is just one of 47 albums here. So it's important that we don't give too much credence to any one thing that might be happening. We want to keep it moving, like I said. So we've got variable length piecemeal, and then I'm going to say there's probably a lot of steps in between, but then the last step, we'll just call it, or sorry, the last category, we're just going to call it free-for-all. Okay. Which means you could use any number of these granular steps that come before it, or you could do some, you know, micro sampling stuff. So maybe we just scrap this whole thing and we take that little piece that I grabbed right there, and that's the sample. Maybe that's the sample we use. And you'll notice that's not even a second long. It's not even a half of a second. It's not even a quarter of a second long. But it's still a sample. Especially if we, especially if we start adding some effects to it. I'm not a huge fan of the default filter delay preset, but we'll see how it sounds. Not bad. Let's not pan this quite so wide though. And let's do let's see, about a similar feedback on each of them. And then let's hit that with a 0. Love it. So, so that's micro sampling. That would probably be like here, where there's absolutely no way that you would recognize what album, what song this is from. Maybe if it's something really recognizable, maybe if it's a, you know, Michael Jackson sample, or you know, something that is something that people's ears pick up on the moment it happens. But for old Carlos Montoya and his album Guitar Artistry, there's no way I could play that and somebody would say, is that Carlos Montoya? So yeah, so we got micro sampling, and then free for all down here is probably what we're going to end up going with. I am going to drop this album back in, and I'm gonna say that we're just gonna commit to that. No more choices, right? The less choices we have, the more creative we are allowed to be. Let that sink in. So here's what we got so far. I'm going to freeze this really quick. Oops. Just realized why this is taking so long. We want this whole thing to not be frozen. We just want, matter of fact, why don't we just put it over here in, what is it, session view? I always forget which is which, but we're going to put it over here in this view and get it out of the way here so that that is all tidy. We want to keep things tidy from the get-go. Speaking of, I'm going to delete these two sends because they don't have a use. We don't have any sends yet. So let me freeze and flatten this. There we go. That's what I was expecting. Okay. So we can see what's happening so far. And I'm going to bump this up to, I guess, like plus 20. And then like minus 20 so that it evens out. This is something I like to do so that we can actually see the waveforms, and then when we don't actually want it to be bumped up volume wise 20 dB, you know, as far as our ears are concerned. So over here on the track volume we lower it to minus 20. So this is our cool. Let's bump this minus 15, I guess. Okay, that's pretty cool. So what I also think could be cool is take this very same thing and let's drop the pitch. And we're also going to, no, sorry. What I meant to say is let's change this to repitch, and then we're going to drop the tempo. Sorry. What I meant to say is we're going to speed up the tempo so that it sounds slower. And this might take a little bit of massaging because we are essentially tuning the sample as well, so it's quite possible that these two are going to be out of tune with each other because we're not using like the pitch knob here where we can bump it up and down by even semitones. That'll keep everything in tune with each other, maybe not in the same key, but at least in tune. We're going to just have some fun with it and try tuning it like this. So you know what? I honestly am already really happy with that. I was anticipating needing to go back and mess with that. However, let me play this soloed. It's a little quiet. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes I would say like, okay, well, let's replace this one with this one. Let's go here and do this. But you know what? Variety needs to be there. We need variety. We need things like this that a human who's trying to be tidy would probably come in and quote unquote fix this stuff, which it might sound okay. But if we leave it untidy, as far as the composition is concerned, it might end up sounding a little more interesting to our ear, a little less rigid. So yeah, I really like that. So and just for fun, this is going to repeat again. Actually, you know what? This one on the bottom is going to repeat 3 more times. And let's get this looking a little more clean. So if I select all of my clips, I go down here to the number of clips selected, I go to rename, and I just delete that. I leave it empty, null, boom. All of a sudden we can see these dividers much better, and I much prefer that. So we can actually see this thing is repeated 3 times, as well as this up here, but I actually want this to change each time it's repeated. So let's do like a 3, so a minor third. Let's do down a minor third. And in order to, once it loops from here back to here, I want it to resolve from the 5 to the 1, which is the most common chord progression that you'll find in music, in Western music at least. So we need to convert that to semitones because we're not working in, you know, scale degrees here. We're working in just regular half a step up, 2 steps up, 3 steps, 4 steps. So if the 1 is 0 steps up or down, we actually need 7 semitones up. Or we could also do -5, because 7 and -5, if we transpose it up 7 semitones or transpose it down 5 semitones, we wind up with the same note. So this one is just an octave down, but we're still getting this 5 to 1 progression. And just to be totally clear, this is what a 5 to 1 sounds like. Let me bring in operator, and first half of this is going to be a G major chord. Make sure that's not too loud. Okay, so we got a G major chord, and a G major would be the 5 in the key of C. So we're trying to go from G to C, or whatever it is. So basically, if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no, sorry, down 5. Is that right? No, we want to go down 7. Okay, that's a 5-1. We can make this a little longer so we can take it in. Let's not loop this so that we can hear it. Okay, and this is just so ingrained in us, this 5-1, that it's a really good idea to throw it in your music because it sounds legit for some reason. There's a lot of, you know, theoretical reasons why that is that are way beyond the scope of this video, but what we should know is that's the kind of sound we're trying to go for, and therefore this last one we want to be the 5, so that when it returns to this one it sounds like a 5 to 1. So we want up 7 semitones. Okay, you hear that? Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun. dee dee. Alternatively, what we could do is a -5 here. So there goes do 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 do. Or I can't go that low. Dee dee dee. And then it goes up to the 1. But yeah, so here's the thing. This one is 0. This one I think we did as +3, which is also a minor third. This one is down 3, which is also a minor third. And then this one we have the choice of going down to -5, which is down to the 5th, or we can go up 7, which is the same as going up to the 5th. So we get the same note either time. Something to consider is that the highest part of your melodic contour or your harmony, whatever it is, the highest part is going to sound the most interesting to the listener. So I'm gonna make this go all the way up to +7, so that we're going, here's like our midpoint, then we go up a little bit, then we go below our midpoint, and then we go even higher above the so far highest point, which was the 3, and then we go back. So yeah. And none of this stuff really matters. That's the thing with music theory. I'm gonna break for a second. Music theory is not prescriptive, it's descriptive, okay? So if you think that music theory exists to tell you what you should do, then you've got it backwards. That's not what it is there for. It's not a bunch of rules that you're supposed to follow. It's actually a way of describing what's already happening, and a way to describe where we might want to take it. Okay? So nothing about music theory is telling us that we have to do it this way. We're using music theory to talk about what we've done so far and where we could want to take this song. Okay? So again, if any part of the music theory doesn't make sense, it's fine. You don't have to know music theory. But knowing music theory is like learning, to me, it's like learning English. It's like knowing the words that describe a certain concept. Whereas not knowing music theory is like only being able to draw pictures. So drawing pictures doesn't get concepts across very well, or at least not for complicated things. Whereas being able to speak words and put sentences together absolutely does enable you to describe more complicated ideas. So let me interrupting myself, and we're going to listen to what we've got so far. And I'm going to turn off the follow action. Okay. And you know, that's pretty cool so far. Not perfect, so it needs a little bit more adjusting. Before I go any further, I am going to maybe drop this tempo down to half speed. Yeah. I don't know if it's just because I've heard this loop 1.5 million times, but I always like to do something with it just to make it sound a little less like the original. So we could change this to repitch. And just before we get much further in this, I'm going to drop the volume of everything. You'll notice when it's at this level, we'll go over here, this is our master fader. We're getting pretty close to 0 already with 3 different tracks. That's no bueno. We're pushing ourselves a little too hard all the way at the beginning. We can always make things louder later, but going back and making things quieter, it's a little more difficult task a lot of times. At least doing it in a way that preserves the dynamic balance of everything. Now we're not even hitting 12, so I'm going to raise everything just a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I'm feeling like there's a little bit too much space right here where I think I would like it if it like reversed into this thing. But we need to get an arrangement going, or else we're going to be in loop mode forever. So let's double our loop, and we're going to go ahead and consolidate all of this, and now we can duplicate that with Control D. So the second time we get through our loop, this is going to reverse into the part that is coming up, and then back here it's going to be reversed. Okay. So hopefully it was clear what I just did there. This is identical to this, except this, each one of these parts, I pasted right here and then reversed it. So I just filled in the gaps a little bit. And hopefully, oh right, we don't actually have a delay on there. So, you know what? Let's add another delay. And we're gonna give it the same treatment. Let's do 21, and this is something like this. I'm going to go ahead and save as the default preset so I don't have to do that anymore. Now let's listen to what we've got. Okay, so we've got the delayed parts here now being put through another delay. However, it's all the same timing. So if we actually want any variation on this part, we're going to need to change these up. So I'm going to change it from 1, 3, 5 to 2, 4, 6. And there's not a good reason I'm doing that. It's just for the sake of variety. I'm going to play around with speeding it up a little bit. Actually, and since this is on repitch, we need to commit the pitch here, because you may have noticed as I adjusted the tempo, since all of these are still set to repitch, it changed the pitch of all of these, which made it out of tune with what we've committed to up here. Okay, so basically I just went here and I hit Control J to consolidate this clip, which removes the repitch quality and commits what's playing to a new audio file that we now can further adjust. Cool. So we could do this, what I'm doing right there, which is duplicating, but a smarter option for our processor would be to loop the one single one. So it's slightly more difficult for your computer to reference each one of these individually versus knowing that it can just reference the first one and just start that first one back at the beginning each time for, you know, the number of times that we loop it. Okay, so and that's why this one down here is also looped, and we can, for whatever reason, I think it was just because we duplicated our loop, we have two separate clips here. They don't need to be separate, so we'll just do this. Now, as far as our computer is concerned, this is the entirety of the loop. It just knows that it's allowed to play it 7 more times after that before it actually loops back to the start. So, still back down at 86, so we're going to bump it up to 102, I guess. I'm just going to play around with this. Okay, you know, I kind of like it, but it's not the coolest thing I've ever written. So I kind of want to massage this a little bit more. I'm going to move this so that the thing actually starts fading in at the start rather than fading in and then it starts, right? So all I did was just moved everything over, and then here where it overflowed, I'm going to drag this back to the beginning. Okay, whatever. So I'm going to scratch this arrangement idea that I had. I can do Control-Shift-X here, and that just cuts all of that. Much easier than trying to delete and then resetting the loop here, or alternatively we could, you know, delete this and then drag all this over. Instead, let's just Control-X. Oops. Control-Shift-X rather for delete time. Control-X is cut, so it would remove just that one clip for you to paste elsewhere. Control-Shift-X will remove everything that happens within that segment of time. Okay. So, okay, and then I think from here I'm going to not talk too much about what I'm doing and just let it play out. But I will explain certain things if I need to. But I do want to, you know, get to the end of this track here at a reasonable time. So let's go ahead and put it into hyperdrive. You'll notice the slower it is, the more those delays sound out of, you know, sound like they're offbeat. But once we get into higher speeds, I really liked, I think that was 230. It's more of a flavor. It doesn't sound so off. It just sounds a little spicy, a little flavorful. So I think I'm going to go for more of a, gosh, I don't even know what kind of genre you would call that. Down at like, the 86 where we were at, I would definitely call this like trip hop. Something like that maybe would be more like trip hop. But I like this. That's got a particular kind of energy to it that I think is dope. So, just to be tidy, renamed a couple things. Atmosphere, I don't really know what to call this yet. I don't know. It's just kind of a special effect. We've got the bass, which, by the way, while I'm here, I want to compress this so that there's not quite so much variation between the loud parts and the soft parts. We got a little clicking, so we need to go to the start here and the end here. And basically what we need to do, you can see right here, it suddenly drops back to the 0 line here. This right here is actually what you're hearing as the click. So we need to get rid of that in order to make it sound a little nicer. So you can hear the click. There's no click. So I'm going to consolidate that, Control J, not duplicate. I'm going to loop this and drag it here. Put a little saturator on it. It's clipping a little bit, so let's drop the bass to like -6, -10. I don't know. Honestly, I don't usually mess with the parameters on a saturator. I just like to pick the one that matches what I'm going for. So I liked Sinoid for whatever reason. Turn that off, and we can see down here that we're peaking, we're clipping. So we're going to add another limiter to this, or a limiter to it rather, so that we are only hitting a certain point here. Because remember, we might be clipping right here, and then if this is not here, we're clipping right here. But once it actually gets played out, we're still applying a -17 dB attenuation to it. So when we limit it, and it looks like it's just about clipping right here, we're still in safe territory. Up here at the, where we actually see the resultant volume of this track, it's only hitting whatever. Since we're soloed, we can see it in the master bus, about halfway between 12 and 24. So, and then just for clarity, if I remove everything, this is what we were working with. This is what it sounds like now. I am going to exaggerate some of this. We could get more of this high end by adjusting the saturator, I'm sure. But I think I'm pretty happy with this. From that to that, sounds pretty good. Been playing a lot of Silent Hill lately, so this kind of choppy, a little spooky thing is right up my alley lately. So let's see. And this has a little bit of, it's got a little bit of a reverb effect going on because it's got delay on it, but there's not actually any reverb. So I am going to add a reverb send here, but I'm going to do something more sound effecty, where let's turn the feedback up pretty high. Yeah, let's just start at 70, and the pre-delay is actually going to be like a quarter note. So I'm going to use control space here, which is, it took me a long time to realize that this was even a shortcut in Ableton, but when you press control space, it will only play within the selected area. So if you select something, control space, there's no messing around with trying to, you know, even there, it's like we're hearing some of this. We don't necessarily want to hear that. Just playing this right here. So when it goes there, you can hear, let's actually add a utility here so that this is bounced up a little bit more. And let's, if we put it here at the end, it's just going to raise the volume on the reverb. If we put it here, it's going to raise the volume of what's getting sent into the reverb. So I think this is a more dramatic effect. Putting it at the end here is just a more of a practical choice. Putting it here at the start is actually going to change the quality of what's coming out of the reverb rather than just making it louder. So again, control space. So you can hear this piece happens, and then the reverb happens, I guess, allegedly a quarter note later, if it's 16 out of 16, or maybe this is the number of 16th notes. So the 1/16, and then 4/16 would be a quarter note, and then 8/16 would be a half note. Okay, I think that's what's happening. So if I do 16 16th notes, that's actually one measure. So the thing happens, and then a measure later, it registers on the reverb send. Boom. Okay. So one more time. Like it. So let's see how this sounds with everything. Cool. So there's like the dry thing happens, and then in between those is when the reverb occurs, and I think that sounds pretty cool. So let's hear it all together. Sorry, forgot to turn this back on. A little swelling, sounds cool. One thing I do want to do, I think, is apply a really harsh sidechain to the reverb here. So every time the bass hits at one of these notes, it's going to duck the reverb. So we could set this, the way that I got to the screen, I just brought in a compressor and then I pressed this arrow to expand to the advanced options. Audio from bass, and we make sure that sidechain is selected, otherwise none of this does anything over here, except for perhaps EQ. Yeah, you can see if we disable sidechain and EQ, then this gets grayed out and it's not actually doing any processing. So sidechain, bass, and then we are not actually going to hear the bass coming through this channel. It's just going to be, this compressor is going to be listening to the bass so that every time something happens on the bass track, it's going to affect the reverb track down here, and it's going to drop it. So if I set this to 1:1, nothing's going to happen, which is good for gradually bringing it in. So we can see it's listening for the bass. This wave that we're seeing down here is the same as the waves up here. And by the way, this DC offset, the fact that it looks like it's rising above the midpoint is not something that we would really want. This is going to make your speakers behave unpredictably. So yeah, it doesn't warrant really a discussion right now, which is something I should probably say more often. But anyway, the fact that it's rising up above the center instead of going above and below is something we probably would want to get rid of in a actual release, which I believe we can do in utility. I think this DC offset, yeah, let me just check this really quick. If I set this to resampling, solo this, yeah, so you can see, well, maybe not. Okay, it looks like it's attempting to do it, but it's still a strange wave. Anyway, again, beside the point. I'm going to get rid of this, and that doesn't matter, but just know that if you ever spot that, you are going to want to do something to fix that before you ship the track. So, where was I? Oh yeah, so this reverb is occurring down here, and we want the bass to drop the reverb level every time the bass occurs right here. So when we play it, okay, we're going to need to do two things here. We need to drop the threshold so that it actually picks up on the fact the bass is playing, and we're going to need to adjust the ratio, which is actually how much it ducks the reverb signal. So first of all, so the lower that we drop this, the more it's going to, hey, Danny's home today. The more that, sorry Danny, I didn't mean to say your name right there. Dead Colossus is home from work today, it looks like. Yeah, so the further down we drop this, you can see, like for instance, if we drop it all the way down, everything is going to be considered, you know, the bass playing is happening. And the higher we have it, the stronger of a signal it's going to require to duck the reverb. Okay, so we have a choice of where we want to put this. I really want like a stuttery effect, so I'm going to keep it really shallow here. And as we raise the ratio, we should actually be able to hear this effect happening. We might need to drop this lower. Okay, cool. So this is what it sounds like without the bass ducking it. Sorry. Here's without the bass ducking it. And then with the bass ducking it. And here's the thing, it sounds really choppy in solo, but the thing is, at every point that it sounds choppy right now, there's actually going to be a bass note taking up some space. So when we listen to everything together, it's not going to sound as choppy. And this is a really big thing. You can use this side chaining, you can use this for dramatic effect, and you can also use it for practical effect. So if you have a bunch of stuff happening at one single time, your listener can't hear all that all at once. You should really pick and choose how many things are happening at once. Honestly, in my opinion, there should only be like 3 or 4, maybe less things happening at a single time. And then, a split second later, that it might be 2 or 3 other things happening at the same time. But if you have a track that is like 20 different percussion tracks, you're probably going to want to use side chaining so you're really limiting what is playing at any given time, and it makes it sound way cleaner. So again, this is what we're working with now that we've got the bass side chain. You can hear it. It sounds really different without the reverb, even for as choppy as it sounded in solo. Cool. So yeah, let's move on from that and let's get rid of the loop, because the more that we compose this song with the loop enabled, the harder it's going to be to transition into a fully arranged track later, right? Because the thing is, like, we're listening, and we go, oh, I know, let's put another guitar track in, and let's use some more samples. Let's do, our own kick and snare samples, so right here, and then eventually what happens is we have just an 8-bar loop. But that's not a song. 8 bars is not a song, presumably. What we actually want is something that takes up like a minute and a half at least, presumably. It depends what kind of thing you're making. But, so the longer we put off actually making an arrangement, the harder it's going to be to convert a bunch of tracks that are only 8 bars long into what feels like a song that's actually progressing, right? And it also has the effect of the entire song has the same personality, because we haven't written, maybe this is one part, but for variety we should write a new part that it goes into, and then a new part that it goes into, and a new part. So we shouldn't just be playing around with one 8-bar loop, because once we arrange this, the entire thing is going to be based off just a single 8-bar loop, which works in some contexts. Like if, for instance, if you're going to have an MC rapping on top of this, that might be perfect. You might want something like that. You don't want it to change up too often. But this is going to be an instrumental track, So we really need to make sure that we are giving the listener interesting things regularly, changes. So what do we do first? Got this. Let's try this, where basically the bass doesn't come in until this second 8 bar. And let's automate the reverb so that it doesn't come on until the bass comes in, right? So we want to start thin, or what I want to do for this track is I want to start thin and I want to build it up into a thicker thing here, and then we're going to bring it back here and maybe make it thinner again. Okay, so here it starts off a little weak and maybe like wimpy, and we're not really sure where it's going until here maybe it gets a lot more convicting, where you're listening to it and you're like, okay, well, yeah, this is a song for sure. And then we dial it back here, so we prepare the listener for the end of the song. So what that would end up being is like 1.5 minutes. I think that's perfect for this demonstration. And another thing that I like to think about is we want maybe not the most important part of the song, but the first major part that we want people to really like get stuck in their head, we want that to happen at 30 seconds or below, or maybe 40 seconds. But we don't want listeners to have to wade through, 2 minutes of music before the really cool part happens. Because what happens is they get to about 15 seconds and they're like, oh, this song kind of sucks. And then they turn it off. So we want listener retention up, which means we need to keep interesting things happening. Okay, and again, I automated the reverb here, so there's no reverb at this part until the bass comes in. And that sounds good, but I don't think that we properly expound or properly, like this is an expose, right? We're introducing the listener to this part of the song. So we need to let it play out a certain amount before we start introducing changes. And then that automation should happen there. And then just to be a little cleaner, maybe it should start like right there. Maybe here. Yeah. I like that. And let's not forget, this is pretty boring so far. I like the sound of it so far, but I certainly wouldn't listen to this song as is. So let's get a little bit more, sample stuff going on. And we got a delay on this that we don't want right now. So okay, we're just going to do a little more like free-for-all sampling. I like that, but I want it to be like kind of, not recognizable exactly what that is. Or maybe a little bit. Let's see. Maybe it leads into this. Maybe if we fade it in. Maybe if we fade it in and then fade it out. Yeah, maybe not that part necessarily. Where does it come from? Cool. I kind of like that. Let's bump that up. And we don't want it to change the actual length. So let's hit warp and 12. That was kind of messed up. Yeah, I think that sounds okay. So basically I bumped it up an octave, and then because it was on beats, it was doing some weird stuff, which can also be cool. Each one of these is going to give a different effect. Tones, we're going to hear the grains. With texture, I believe we have texture is like tones, I believe, but it gives you more control over the way it interpolates between grains, which is called the flux. Yeah, honestly, it's not my favorite sound, like granular synthesis and granular sampling, but you know, that's okay. It works in some spots, but I am usually partial to Complex or Complex Pro, and then I also like beats, only not the way that we were doing it. I usually like to set it to whatever this first option is, and then changing it to like a regular, you know, 32nd note or a 16th note, and then this is going to change how much of it actually lets through. And that 32nd beat, I think, is a little too, yeah, so alright, I think I have an idea for what I want to do. I'm going to come back to that kind of thing, but for now we're going to set this to Complex or Complex Pro. Yeah, I really like that. So again, what we can do, we can either freeze and flatten this, or we can just hit Control J, which is consolidate, and it's going to bake in all of these manipulations that we've done, and it's going to just reference a brand new audio clip. So Control J, consolidates. Okay, now we're back at basically the just vanilla screen. No more, according to Ableton, there's no more pitch change, because the pitch change is baked into the clip now. And then we can see also when you Control J or consolidate, it will normalize, which means basically it's going to bring the level up so that the highest point hits 0 dB, and then it's going to drop the resultant volume so that it is the same volume it was before you consolidated it. So all that to say is it is keeping it at the same volume, but it's changing some things under the hood to make it easier to work with. So now we have an additional 25 dB to work with, where we could bump this up, you know, as loud as we want it. But we're going to keep it down to like where it was. And let's see how this sounds in the mix. This one that I'm saving for later, I'm going to turn that off. and that's cool. It's cool, if not a little predictable, that it happens right there. Let's change that up. Okay. So that's cool. We just offset it a little bit because the listener is probably going to be expecting something to happen right here, and if it happens right there, it's just a little predictable. So if we offset it just a bit, yeah, it's whatever. So we got that. And then just for ease of working with, you know, like for instance, if we wanted to put this also here, well, kind of a moot point because Ableton does actually assume that you might want to put it right there. But the idea that I was going to say is it would be difficult to like drag it exactly to the right spot, and it's also redundant to duplicate everything like that. So what I like to do is Control J that whole thing. This does take up more space on your computer, so that's something to think about. But I think that this is a lot easier to work with because now you can drop it right in the slot and it will stay exactly lined up. So I'm going to loop this. Okay. And, you know, let's just be a little adventurous. I'm just going to start cutting out a measure each time. So now it looks like this, where listeners are a little less sure of when this thing is going to happen, but it's still happening at a regular interval, which gives it some structure. So let's hear that. So there's the first one. Happens at the end of the 4 bars. That one happens right there. And actually, you know what? Here's an important thing. I don't really like that, so we're not going to do that. Instead, let's have it happen every other time. And then on this one, it's actually going to happen at the latter half rather than at the start. Here, for the first half of the song, it's basically happening halfway through. And then at the latter half of the song, it's happening at the very end. So it's going to be... Okay, blah, blah, blah. We're going, we're going, we're going. Okay, so that thing happens again that listeners will recognize from back here, but it doesn't happen so often that they're tired of hearing it. In fact, by the end of the song, as it is right now, it only happens 2 times, which I think is perfect. So I'm also going to bump this up to -20 dB because it's competing with more parts here. So it necessarily needs to be louder. Cool. And let's get into using this guy, which this is just the same thing that's happening up here. However, I have it set to beats instead of complex like this one is. So this one, we can hear the individual pick noise and articulation of the notes. And in here, by contrast, it's actually going to grab the start of every 16th note, and it's just going to play that much before it cuts the rest. Okay, so this is a quarter note, this is an eighth note, and then this is a 16th note. So essentially what's happening here is it grabs the 16th note and then it deletes this. It grabs the 16th note and it deletes this. Okay, but we're automating that process with the beats, warp mode, and the 16th note parameter. And let's see how this sounds, just in solo. Okay, so I kind of like it. That's kind of cool. And then this bar right here changes how much it's letting through. So it gets more choppy the lower this number is. And that's cool. That's kind of what I was going for. I'm going to start committing stuff to this sample or this clip here. So just for security, I'm going to duplicate it so that there's a safe version down here that we can return to this point later on. But now I can make all the changes I want to this one, and there's basically a checkpoint down here that we can return to. So what we've got, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted, is a real okay. And that's happening every 3 bars, which again is just for variety. To keep everything tidy, you would want things happening every, you can see, right? You would want things happening every 4 of these, typically. But in order to introduce a little variety, it can be good to have things happening every 3, for instance, as it's happening down here. We'll see how that sounds. That's what I was going for. I like that real percussive aspect, but I want it to sound more like more bassy. And again, let's go ahead and so that we don't have to select this and manipulate all of these with the same parameter, I'm going to loop this. Okay, so now I don't have to select all of this, I just got to select this whole chunk and we can make changes. Cool. So that's exactly what I was thinking. Let's duplicate this and let's offset this. So I guess actually like that. And we could do even like -7 maybe. Cool. And let's bump this up so we can hear that more. And these two belong together, so we're going to group this. And once we on solo, yeah, I think. Okay, here's what I think I want to happen. Let's drop everything so we can actually see. Here's where we're pulling samples from, and here's our main loop. So basically the bass comes in here, it plays for 8 bars, and then I want the bass to drop out again, just like it was at the start. So we're just going to go ahead and duplicate this whole thing again. And then at this point is where this thing stops. Okay, so we're actually introducing a lot of variety here because, at this part, these 4 things are playing, at this part, these 3 things are playing. These 4 things are playing, which are different from these 4. These 5 things are playing at this point, at this part, and then all of a sudden this whole thing drops out, which makes this entire back half of the song different from this first part of the song. And we're gonna make this an outro, I guess, just so we can do something where this guy comes back in, and maybe just for like, you know, 16 bars it comes in, and then it drops back out. I don't know. We'll see how this sounds. And then before I play it back, I want to, I think, do something with this. What was I thinking? Oh, yeah, what I wanted to do was, maybe not that. Like that, but okay, cool. Okay. Very cool. Okay, so now Control J, and we've got this thing going on. And yeah, let's keep everything fading in. We're gonna lop off this part so that we're back to a 2-bar loop. Let's see what this sounds like with everything. So we really want people to be able to hear it when it comes in, so I'm going to bump that even further up in volume. Okay, and let's tease that one more time. So and then I actually don't like that right there, so I'm going to delete that. That's the, I feel like that should just, it should definitely fill things out, but it's not, it would be really easy to get sick of that sample if we have it occurring too often. So yeah, we deleted that right there. Okay, and this thing is just being teased so that when we get to this point, once we get to the spot where the bass comes in, I'm going to want this playing every time like this. Cool. And again, we're going to loop this, and we can see our loop point is not set right. We want this to be, yeah, 2 bars. So if I go down here and I change the length, it'll change where that loop actually occurs, right? So I want it to happen just like that. And I'm tempted to copy paste this over to here, but I think that's too repetitive. That's definitely something I would have defaulted to a while ago, you know, years ago. But now I think this song would be better served by not having that thing happen here, and then it comes into play here, and then again it's not happening here, and then it is happening here. And again, I'm talking about this section down here. So nothing, then it comes in, nothing, then it comes in. And I like what's happening here. We've got kind of a drone effect in that pretty much everything is staying in the same tonality, but this atmosphere is changing on top of it, right? So without this atmosphere, everything is pretty consistent. Cool. But when we have the atmosphere in, you can hear the chord changes. Cool. So let's have this guy playing at the same time as this bass, I guess. And let's drag this down here. Let's do a little bit of color coding, just to be able to see things a little clearer. This, I think, should go like up here. Drums, we're going to drop to the bottom, give it that kind of thing, and these are all basically similar type of thing. So let's do a sign. Okay, looking good. And then I'm going to select all with Control A. Down at the bottom left, I'm going to rename, and I'm going to delete and leave it empty, null. Press enter, and now none of our clips have names. We can just rely on the actual title of the track over here, which admittedly is not super descriptive right now. We've got track 6 audio, and then we've got track 8, which is named the same thing as track 1, but doesn't matter. Well, we'll survive. So right now I've got this bass thing, which I'm going to call pizzicato bass, versus the I don't know what you would call that, but yeah, we've got pizzicato bass and then just some other bass. Right now they both occur at the same time. And then this, I think, is a little too evident, I guess. So I'm going to just add a reverb on this that is 100%. So instead of getting half dry, half wet, I'm just going to, this thing is just going to be drenched in reverb. It's going to sound farther away. Yeah, that's perfect. So in case you missed it, it's all the way out there versus okay. And maybe just while I'm here, I'm going to drop this to, well, maybe let's drop it to 50. No, we'll just get rid of the reverb for this very last time that it happens. So as the song is stopping, all of a sudden that thing is way more evident than it was, way closer than it was before. So yeah, just kind of spitballing here. I did notice that this section right here felt a little too busy, which makes sense. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different clips occurring at the same time. It's hard to keep track of what all is happening. because there's just so much of it. The human ear can only keep track of like 3 sounds, maybe 4 sounds at the same time. You can certainly have more than that playing at a time, but the thing is, you need some of those to just be texture and not something that the listener is actually supposed to be hearing and listening to. So I'm going to keep this simple, and I'm just going to find something or some things out of this to get rid of. So I for sure want at least one of these basses. Actually, you know what? Maybe this bass should start here. Whoops. In contrast to this bass. So the pizzicato bass plays for whatever 16 bars, and then it goes to this bump, 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 bump. And then maybe back here, the pizzicato bass and that one plays at the same time, because we got a little emptiness right here. So that's still only 4 different things playing at the same time. One thing that I forgot I was going to do is actually pan these. So let's do a -30 and a +30. And that'll make things a little easier to listen to as well if you split them across the stereo space. So yeah, I feel pretty okay with that. It's still a little busy, but it's okay. And one thing that I'm noticing, this used to be our melody part. Kind of. I mean, it's a harmony. It's more like a harmony because it's chords. But this used to be the melody that we were hearing on top of everything else. Now it's there at the bottom. If you listen. It's playing a more minor role. So let's bring something in at this spot that's actually just going to be like a pad, and it's just going to embellish this thing here. So this sounds contradictory to what I said earlier, where we don't want more things playing at the same time, but in my opinion, conceptually, we're not having more things playing at the same time. We're adding something that is going to mimic this guy right here. So the way that we're going to hear it is this thing is changing. There's not a new thing happening. We're adding something that is going to make it seem like the texture of this part right here is changing, if that makes sense. So it's this thing. And let's do let's just see what we got in the, to choose from. I'm going to turn the, down here at the, kind of bottom right, I'm going to adjust the cue, the listening volume, so it's not quite so loud. And that's kind of a cool sound. I'm gonna just drop that. Whoops, that's actually a an audio file. So I need to, once I drop it on this MIDI track, it puts it in its own sampler. But we're not going to do anything with that yet. I just like the sound of it, so I want to hold on to it for later. We've got Abilene Winter Pad, and you know, I'll admit I don't really like the default sounds on Ableton. But when they don't give you freaking awesome sounds out of the box, it does force you to work on your sound design chops. So that's okay. That's an alright trade-off for me. I kind of like that. If we got... Yeah, that's cool. We're going to do Cozier Pad here. And we got to drop it into here. Now, we just need to follow what's going on here, which... we need to sample, or we need to solo this guy. Okay, so cool. This one is tuned to C, it looks like. And so is this one, which is a complete coincidence because this was actually pulled from a record. No reason this should be centered on C, but it turns out it is. So we can do a C, and then we can follow the same pattern, which was up a minor third, and then down a minor third, and then this was the spot where we talked about we could either go up 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or from that C we can go down 5. So it just depends whether we want a G3 or a G2. And I'm going to go with a G3, and I'm also going to do a little comping on this, and I'm going to make this minor third down, the A. I'm actually going to make that an A3 instead of an A2. So this is the contour we've got. Let's hear these two things together. Okay, and you know, whatever, it's needs some massaging. Most things do. So I'm going to set that back to A2. Cool. And since this is just a straight audio file, there's no special effects happening. Like for instance, I think I'd want to add a low pass filter. Yeah. A jillion % I would want to add a low pass filter. And 12 and 24 is going to change how sharp that cutoff is. So like we could do a low pass filter in an EQ8 like this. The 24 is going to have a cutoff that looks more like that, this 24 here. And if we set it to 12, the cutoff is going to look more like that. So there are reasons you would want to use one or the other. A more shallow cutoff should be used for real instruments, in my opinion. For things that need to sound, you need the EQ to sound more transparent. You would use a less, or a more gradual fall off, right? You see how this slope is very gradual. What that sounds like is this compared to the same cutoff but sharper. Sounds like that. And then if we make it even sharper, you can probably hear it's a much more dramatic effect. So if you're EQing for drama or special effect, you want sharpness, because that is more interesting to the ear, and it retains more of the original frequency, which allows your listeners' ears to hear that there's something dramatic happening to it. And also with sweeping, you can hear it. It's a different kind of sound too. So you can actually hear the versus when you make it more shallow. It just sounds like those frequencies are being added back in, but you don't actually hear an audible. So all that to say is, I want something more natural, so I'm going to set this to 12. We'll get rid of this EQ8. And I believe this adds a little bit of saturation to the EQ filter here. So we can see, yeah. And what that allows us to do is go even lower with our low pass. And then drive it pretty hard. So that's cool. Let's see how that sounds in the mix. I'm going to assume that this is going to come out of nowhere, so I'm going to lower this to like, I don't know, minus 12. And then that's just going to occur with this. And then something that I'm noticing that's a red flag is this clip occurs all the way through the song, which is probably not what we want. If we have an opportunity to remove some of this so that we're contrasting the space with the actual sample, I think we're going to wind up with a better effect. So let's go ahead and they can both play at the same time here, and then after this section, this guy drops out. This guy that we've gotten used to hearing for 32 bars is now going to be missing for 32 bars. And hopefully that makes for a more interesting thing to listen to. So let's hear what we've got so far. Yeah, so we're getting somewhere. I am going to bump this up to like minus 9. By the way, I like to work in 3 dB intervals, so minus 3, minus 6, minus 9. Sometimes you would go 1.5. You could even do minus 10, minus 9 if you're in like a mixing, mastering situation. But typically you're not really going to hear the difference there. It's more just like if we're at minus 9, maybe it feels a little too bright. So if we just bring it down by 1 dB, maybe we'll see if we don't get that same feeling from it. But as far as what you actually hear, you're not really going to be able to notice a difference between minus 10 and minus 9. So I like to work in 3 dB intervals. So yeah, we wanted this at minus 9. And one thing I want to do for interest's sake is I want to do kind of a call and response between the drums and the bass here, this pizzicato bass. So every time that this bass occurs, shoot, this is all still repitched, so let me consolidate this really quick. Loop, and then again we're noticing that this thing is happening all the way through. What is this? I don't know. We're noticing that this thing is happening all the way through the song, so this is a fantastic opportunity to break this up somehow, but we'll explore those options later. What I want to do right now is whenever the bass comes in, the drums are going to back off, not volume-wise, but they're just going to play more staccato. So that's done with beats. You pick beats, make sure warp is enabled, and then you go to, sorry, not transients. Well, we'll start with transients. We'll see how that sounds. Not always my favorite setting, but it is the closest to the original. So basically it's set for 100. It'll let 100% of the things through with 100, and then once this pizzicato bass comes in, it's dropping down. We'll call it 30. Cool. So hopefully you can hear that. So this drum clip is way lighter, way thinner than this one. And even just adding those little variations can make a huge difference. And then since we're actually letting less through on this one, I'll usually bump the volume up, which will result in both of these sounding more similar in volume. And I like that. I'm going to turn that into its own loop with Control J, loop here, and then just so I know, this is going to be intro drum, maybe intro loop. Okay, and then that can occur up to maybe this spot, so then right before bar 17 that thing doesn't happen anymore. And again, just for variation, I'm going to, that's a snare right there, I'm going to have that snare happen 4 times leading up to this. Not going to listen, let's just send it. Unloop this, and then yeah, that goes there. And then at the spot where that atmospheric thing drops out, it's going to be just the stripped back drums, which will make that happen for whatever that long. So 30 there. Oh, and we need to make sure that this drop down is set to this right arrow up against a pipe. Right, so we're essentially not doing anything if we do this. Nothing's happening. However, this is the default. And these two come more into play when we've got crazy, like if I stretch this out, these other two options would come more into play. But, you know, yeah, we'll do that next. Oh, Dead Colossus. Radio. What's going on with that radio? Okay, we got a 30 here. We're sounding good. Another thing I wanted to do is probably change this. So maybe it just goes, maybe it just like ascends like this, and it just does that like 2 times before we get this back. And or maybe that doesn't happen, I don't know. I'll press 0 on my numpad to deactivate this clip so that I know maybe I want this there, maybe I don't know. But for right now it won't affect the song at all. Yeah, let's see how this sounds. That should be like -6 probably. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add a utility to the master so that I can automate this so that it actually fades in from the start. I think that's going to help out a lot. I can do Alt and drag to change the contour here. A to disable automation, or leave automation view. And then what I was talking about earlier is if we have some crazy time stretching here where we do like, I don't know, like something like that. So since we have this guy selected, it's only going to play the start of each transient. And it's going to play 30% of it and then just stop it. And then now it's playing 100% of the transient, but it leaves us with a ton of empty space. So if we use one of these two, like this one, it'll fill up the space more. And perhaps we could use that for a little transition. I don't know, let's deactivate that, see what this sounds like. I don't know, we'll see. You know, maybe not, but maybe what we would want to do, let's start over, drag that back down there. Instead of just doing like crazy dragging, let's actually do this more controlled. Let's stretch it just once, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of cool. And probably want to drop that in, I guess. And then to make it make more sense that that drum change is happening, I'm going to actually, I'll just delete all that. And we'll make this, this one happens the first 2 times, and this one happens the second 2 times. Okay. Let's see what that sounds like. This is still too loud. That should be -6, I believe. Okay. We like it. I think we like it. And let's use these ghoulish pads. I'm just going to use my keyboard so I can hit the keyboard icon up here in the top right, and that will allow me to use my QWERTY keyboard to play stuff. I can use Z and X to go up and down octaves. You can see that here in the bottom left is happening. Okay, so And then this one is not tuned the same way. So do you and then I'm actually just going to type this in, which was a, I think this is actually a B. So where everything else thinks it's a C, this instrument actually believes it's a B. We can do like a whole bunch of them and then drop it down an octave, maybe. Yeah, whatever. And then up 3 for the minor third. And then normally we would do down 3 and then down 3 again like that. We've been using that and probably overusing that throughout this whole track. So we're going to do and that should go down, I guess. So here it returns to the B. It's just a little bit, it's a different pattern, which again, variety is the fruit of life. Maybe this one goes up. And then up another 2, I guess. Then that goes there to there. Let's actually go back down and then up like this. No, just up and down and up and down. Okay. And let's mimic that down here. Except everything is a half step down. By the way, it's easier to tune if you go up here. And for instance, we can hear. Yeah. When we hold it out too long, it's triggering part of the pad here. Whatever part changes to a different pitch, we're holding it out too long and it's hitting that part. We don't want it to. Still doing a little bit, so we'll just... Okay. That sounds in tune. Now let's drop it back down. And then honestly, this guy, I don't even think I want it to play right there. I think I want both of these to come in just like right there, and we need something new right here. Let's go ahead and get a little more sampling action in here. Let's collapse everything. And I'd really like some chords. Okay, so I think we can fudge some chords. Okay, so we're going to take this guy and just put it here at the bottom. And like this. Oh, I know what's happening. It's fading in, so it's messing with what I'm hearing. Okay. We'll put that at like 8. And then just like some tremolo stuff. And I want this to be just like a full-on chord. So what we can do is duplicate these tracks, and this is going to go up a minor third, and this is going to go up 7. So we got the 1, 3, and 5, which is kind of weird, admittedly. However, I'm going to resample all of this. So it's kind of weird, but now that we have this all in one single audio track, we can pitch it down, which again is like touching on the Silent Hill stuff that I've been digging on lately. You know, in the context of a song like this, it sounds pretty bizarre, but I think that would be that would fit right in if we were, you know, running through the apartment building in Silent Hill 2 or the elementary school in Silent Hill 1. So anyway, we're just having fun. But this is actually also not in tune. We wanted it over here, I believe. And let's make this like that. Some of the stuff is pretty challenging to make it work, but yeah, I like just that actually. And then we can hear got some low end stuff that I think is kind of throwing things off. So I think we could just do Booyah. And again, let's get in the habit. Loop. Let's not try to juggle 100 different clips. Let's just make it one clip that's looped all these times. Rename nothing. Okay. I'm gonna do something like this, where okay, now I'm gonna consolidate all of this, and this one's gonna go back up. And it's gonna start like that and fade out. This one's gonna start low and then fade in. You know, honestly, I'm gonna delete all of this because I don't, you know, it's cool at the start. Doesn't really need to come back in, honestly, because we got kind of a new vibe going here, which is important. After a minute of listening to the same kind of vibe, it is not a bad idea to change some things up so that it feels like you're not listening to the same track. So I am going to actually I'm going to lower the tempo at this, maybe like right here, and it drops down to, I don't know, like 200. Yeah, and like I love this beat way more than I love this, but we couldn't have gotten here without trying to massage all this stuff and, you know, make it into something. Like, you know, it's possible that we could have started with something this cool, but what's more likely is that we need to just start throwing stuff at the wall, as in this part, and then eventually we reach something that's like, okay, that is actually what I want the song to be like. So back here, we got this thing going on. Delete this last one. Gosh, you know, like, yeah, that's gonna go. And that's going to go too, which means we can delete this automation. I'm just going to delete these clips. Honestly, they're not too terribly important, so I'm going to have them even farther in the background. I'm going to drop the volume. And And then this, let's see about this. Okay, okay, okay. This, let's actually make this occur more regularly. Something like this, maybe. Something like and silence here, and maybe silence here. Yeah. And I don't remember what was happening right here. So here, let's consolidate that. Duplicate it. And the first part, let's play again. Okay. Let's consolidate this. Both bass parts are going to come back in. And then this time, let's actually make this. Again with the Silent Hill shit. Yeah, honestly, you know, if I had my druthers, I would probably just scrap this whole first part of the song, and then just expound on this. Like, that's how the song starts. But whatever, you know. This part, you know, kind of plays a role too, but and since we've got this drum playing throughout the whole song, let's go ahead and mess with these a little bit. I've used all of these so many times. Okay, so we're going from that. Let's have the tambourine just come in right there. So here and then right there. Let's keep that going actually. Maybe just this part. Maybe just this part. Just like that. something dumb like that. And then for the last two, I guess we'll just do like that. Then we'll take the snare, I guess. Yeah, like that. And I'm gonna be lazy. No, I'm not gonna be lazy. Loop. Alright, and in the interest of time, I think I want to add just one single more thing here, which is going to be a melody. So far we have had zero melody. There's nothing for the listener to sing along to, and that's important. So we're going to do this, I guess, we're going to do this with a real sounding instrument. Let's not do like a real electronic sound like we have for the, the rest of the song is pretty processed and heavily synthesized. So we're going to do, and actually I'm going to just go ahead and record. And this is going to be on my QWERTY keyboard, so I'm going to have to go back in and probably change some stuff. Something like that. Whatever. Okay, 3 more bars, 2 more bars. Turn the follow action back on. And then at that part, I want to do some non-functional harmony, which basically I'm going to take that chord and without any regard for the actual key, it's going to go up a half step and then it's going to go back down a half step. Cool. And I realized I said we were going to do some melody. This is actually just harmony. So let's actually do the melody now. I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to delete all this. So here's the chords down here, and then this is going to be, the actual melody line. Maybe send that to the reverb. I just realized we only sent one thing to this reverb, which we might eventually, we could want to go back and actually, let's see what this sounds like. This. This part is so funky, like weird. I don't know if I like it, but whatever. Okay, so we got the E-piano, the electric piano, going through the same reverb. So that's going to help us out. Let's also add a filter delay to this. And let's bump up 6, 8, 16, I guess. And I think we got a little too much going to the reverb. Okay, I gotta figure out, it goes... Okay. Just had to figure out how to play a C minor on, on my QWERTY keyboard. So, got the song fading in. Okay, that clashed a little bit. Just delete this part. Ding. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. And I gotta see that. Okay. Just a simple G there. Cool. Like that. I'm gonna get rid of that reverb. Matter of fact, let's get rid of the delay as well. And then that right here clashed with, yeah. Okay, what are we doing? Let's add that those keys, those chords to the reverb. Cool, like that. Cool, I like that. We'll record that. Now, what was it? Goes. Not that one. That should actually be right there. Move that back a touch. And maybe end the song like that. Cool. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. It's not the best song I ever wrote, but it's pretty good for 2.5 hours. Definitely a good start. So I might send this to somebody to collaborate on, or I'm not sure. But that is one of the many ways that I go about writing music. All right, thanks for watching.